I'm Lauren from A Menagerie of Stitches. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 10 of the 12 days of mini Christmas amigurumi. If you've been following along from the beginning, thank you so much. And if you're just joining, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. Over the last 9 days, we've made some really cute Christmas amigurumis. Let's quickly recap all the ones we've made so far. We have a hot cocoa, a snow globe, a drum, Christmas pudding. We have a strand of Christmas lights, a Christmas tree, an angel, holly, and a jingle bell. If you want to go back to make any of these, I'll have links in the description for each of the videos. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the last 2 minis. If you prefer an ad-free PDF version of these patterns, you can purchase the downloadable PDF on my website, amenagerieofstitches.com. Let's go over the materials we'll need for today's project before I open our little bag. You can also find the full material list in the description below. Today I'll be using Hobbii Friends Cotton 8/4 in the colors white, which is color number 1, and pomegranate, color number 41. These projects are small enough that you only need 1 skein of each color, so feel free to use whatever kind of yarn you already have in your stash. You'll also need a size B 2.25mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, a stitch marker, a pair of 6mm safety eyes, black embroidery floss and a needle. You'll also need some fiberfill stuffing and a hot glue gun, which I have off to the side getting warm. All right, let's reveal day 10. Today we're going to be making a mini Santa hat. For this pattern, you'll need to know how to make a magic ring, single crochet, invisible decrease, chain, and half double crochet. You'll also need to know how to work into the back loops only and how to work into the back bumps of a chain piece. Video tutorials for how to do these techniques can also be found in the description below. Let's get started. We're going to start by making the hat with the color pomegranate. To start round 1, the pattern says make 6 single crochets into a magic ring. So I'm going to create my magic ring. Then I'm going to place 6 single crochets inside. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then I'm going to tighten the hole by pulling on this tail, and there we go. That's round 1. Now let's move on to round 2. Round 2 of the pattern says single crochet 1, increase 3 times for a total of 9 stitches. So I'm going to place 1 single crochet into the first stitch, then I'm going to place an increase into the next stitch. So that's 1, and then an increase. So 1, 2. Now I'm going to repeat that 2 more times. So single crochet 1, increase in the next stitch, single crochet 1, increase in the last stitch. And that's going to be the end of round 2. Now I'm just going to pull this tail just a little bit more to close that hole, and you can see that it's starting to curl in the opposite direction. So I'm just going to take my crochet hook and insert it where the little tail is right here, and I'm going to push it through and kind of get that shape to start. That way it starts to form the cone shape of the hat. Now I'm going to place my stitch marker into that last stitch. Then we'll move on to round 3. Round 3 of the pattern says single crochet 9, which means I'm just going to place 1 single crochet into each of these 9 stitches. And that's going to be the end of round 3. Now let's move on to round 4. Round 4 of the pattern says single crochet 2, increase 3 times for a total of 12 stitches. So I'm going to place 1 single crochet into the next 2 spaces. So that's 1 and 2. Then I'm going to place an increase in the next stitch. So 1, 2. Now I'm going to repeat that until I hit the stitch marker. And that's going to be the end of round 4. Now moving on to round 5, the pattern says single crochet 3, increase 3 times for a total of 15 stitches. So I'm going to place 1 single crochet into the next 3 spaces. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Then in the following stitch, I'm going to place an increase. So 1, 2. Now I'm going to repeat that until I hit the stitch marker. And that's going to be the end of round 5. Now before moving on to round 6, this tail is going to start getting in the way, and this was our starting tail, so I'm just going to bunch it up and then I'm going to place it inside the tip of the hat. And you can use your crochet hook to push it down in there, but that way it just keeps it out of the way while we're crocheting. Now let's move on to round 6. Round 6 of the pattern says single crochet 15. So I'm going to place 1 single crochet into each of these 15 stitches. And that's going to be the end of round 6. Now let's move on to round 7. Round 7 of the pattern says to single crochet 4, increase 3 times for a total of 18 stitches. So that just means I'm going to place 1 single crochet into the next 4 spaces. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in the following stitch, I'm going to make the increase. 1, 2. Now I'll repeat that until I hit the stitch marker. And that's going to be the end of round 7. Moving on to round 8, the pattern says single crochet 18. I'm just going to place 1 single crochet into each of these 18 stitches. And that's going to be the end of round 8. Moving on to round 9, the pattern says single crochet 5, increase 3 times for a total of 21 stitches. So I'm going to place 1 single crochet into the next 5 spaces. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then in the following stitch I'm going to make an increase. 1, 2. Now repeat that until you hit the stitch marker. And that's going to be the end of round 9. Now let's move on to round 10. The pattern says single crochet 6, increase 3 times for a total of 24 stitches. So I'm going to place 1 single crochet into each of the next 6 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then in the following stitch, I'm going to make an increase. So 1, 2. Now I'll repeat that all the way around until I hit the stitch marker. And that's going to be the end of round 10. Let's move on to round 11. The pattern says single crochet 24. That just means I'm going to place 1 single crochet into each of these 24 stitches. And that's going to be the end of round 11. Now let's move on to round 12. The pattern says single crochet 7, increase 3 times for a total of 27 stitches. So you'll place 1 single crochet into each of the next 7 spaces. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Then you're going to place an increase in the next stitch. 1, 2. Now you'll repeat that 2 more times. And that's going to be the end of round 12. Moving on to round 13, the pattern says single crochet 8, increase 3 times for 30 stitches. So you'll place 1 single crochet into each of the next 8 spaces. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then in the next stitch, we'll place an increase. So 1, 2, and I'll repeat that until I hit the stitch marker. And that's going to be the end of round 13. Moving on to round 14, the pattern says single crochet 9, increase 3 times for a total of 33 stitches. So you'll place 1 single crochet into the next 9 spaces. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then in the following stitch, I'm going to place 2 single crochets together. 1, 2, and that's my increase. Now repeat that all the way around until you hit the stitch marker. And that's going to be the end of round 14. Moving on to round 15, the pattern says single crochet 33. That just means I'm going to place 1 single crochet into each of these 33 stitches. And that's going to be the end of round 15. Now let's move on to round 16 of the pattern. It says to single crochet 10, increase 3 times for a total of 36 stitches. So I'm going to place 1 single crochet into the first 10 spaces. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Then I'm going to place an increase in the next stitch. So 1, 2. Now repeat that until you hit the stitch marker. And that's going to be the end of round 16. Now let's move on to rounds 17 and 18. The pattern says to single crochet 36. So for those 2 rows, I'm just going to place 1 single crochet into each of the 36 stitches. And that's the end of round 17. Now I'll repeat that again for round 18. And that's going to be the end of round 18. And now your hat should be looking like this. And now we're going to add the safety eyes. Now it's time to add the safety eyes. We're going to be adding them between rounds 14 and 15, placing them 4 stitches apart. So from the top, I'm going to count down to 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So in between 14 and 15, I'm going to insert my hook. And this just helps open up that stitch a little bit. Then I will place the safety eye. And then I'm going to count over 4 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the 5th stitch, I'm going to insert the crochet hook. All right, and that's going to be how we insert the eyes. Now I'm going to add the smile. If you're unfamiliar with how to make a smile, I do have a video tutorial here on my YouTube channel if you need a brush up, and I'll have that linked down below in the description. All right, and now I'm just going to make a knot to tie that off, and then I'll trim the tail. And now I'll add the safety backings to the eyes. All right, and that is going to be how we add the face. Now let's move on to finishing the hat. Now we're going to start adding fiber fill to the hat, but we're going to leave rounds 1 through 7 unstuffed. So I'm going to count from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And right here, we're just going to fold this over, and we will not be stuffing this part of the hat. So we'll stuff everything up to this point. You can see inside there, that's where I'm going to add all of the stuffing. We will sew this down at the end. So just make sure that you keep this held down while you add stuffing so that nothing escapes and goes inside there. So I'm just going to add a little bit of fiber fill to the hat. And then I'm going to start with round 19. And then we will continue adding fiber fill as we go. So for round 19 of the pattern, it says in back loops only, single crochet 4, invisible decrease 6 times for a total of 30 stitches. So I'm going to place my hook into the back loop only, and I'm going to single crochet into the first 4 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then I'm going to make an invisible decrease in the next 2. So insert my hook underneath both of those back loops, yarn over, and then make the invisible decrease. So I'll repeat that 6 times until I end at the stitch marker. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4, then make an invisible decrease. And that's going to be the end of round 19. And as you can see, round 19 created a rim, so that way we have a base to our hat. And as you can see, this kind of just sticks up, but you'll just be able to sew that down later. All right, let's move on to round 20. Round 20 of the pattern says to single crochet 3, invisible decrease 6 times for a total of 24 stitches. So you're going to single crochet 1 into the next 3 spaces. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Then you're going to make an invisible decrease, and you'll repeat that all the way around until you hit the stitch marker. And that's going to be the end of round 20. Now I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to add the fiber fill to the hat. So I'm just holding down that flat piece as I add the fiber fill. All right, and I'll continue adding more as I finish closing this, but I'm going to pause here and move on to round 21. Now let's move on to round 21 of the pattern. It says to single crochet 2, invisible decrease 6 times for a total of 18 stitches. So I'm going to place 1 single crochet into the next 2 spaces. So that's 1 and 2. Then I'm going to make an invisible decrease. Now repeat that all the way around until we hit the stitch marker. So 1, 2, and then make an invisible decrease. and that's going to be the end of round 21. Now let's move on to round 22. The pattern says single crochet 1, invisible decrease 6 times for a total of 12 stitches. So that just means I'm going to place 1 single crochet into the first stitch and then make an invisible decrease in the next. And I'm going to repeat that all the way around. And that's going to be the end of round 22. Now that I've reached this point, I'm going to add the remaining fiber fill to the bottom of the hat. Remember, just keep that folded over while you're stuffing. And you also don't want to stuff too much that this bottom part starts to puff out. You want it to be pretty flat, so it will be a little understuffed, but that's okay. All right. All right, and now that I'm happy with how much I have stuffed in there, I'm going to continue on finishing the last round. Moving on to round 23, the pattern says invisible decrease 6 times for a total of 6 stitches. So I'm going to make an invisible decrease in each of these stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this last one will be the 6th one. All right, and that's the end of round 23. Now let's fasten this off, but we're going to leave a tail for sewing. Now with my hook, I'm just going to pull that yarn all the way through. And now we're going to close that hole using this yarn tail. So in the 6 stitches that we have, we're going to work from the inside out. So underneath the front loop of that first stitch, coming from the inside of the hole to the outside, pull this through. And we'll do that to all 6 of these stitches. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then I'm going to place my thumb at the base and give this a little pull, and it'll close up that hole. Now insert back into the center of the hole, and now we're going to actually weave it all the way up to the top right here where this is going to be sewn down. So if you fold this over, weave that needle all the way up through to the top, and you'll come out pretty much right where that hits the hat. So where this flap folds over and touches, that's where you want the needle to come through. So I'm going to insert it into the flap, and then you're going to pull this through. Now as you pull through, you can see the bottom part is going to cinch and close. And now you're kind of left with this flap that is not staying down. We need to sew across here. So in order to do that, we're going to insert the needle back into the same stitch where this yarn came out of. And we're going to go down into the hat. Let me flip this out. So you can see that the needle is now on the other side and it's going to go into the hat. I'm going to come out one of the stitch holes on the side here. So it should look like this. Now pull this through. You can adjust the fold over as well. And then you're just going to pull that and it'll start to cinch the fold into place. And then I like to hold it into place actually while I'm doing this, just so that it's not kind of sticking out and wonky like that. So just make sure you're holding it where you want it to be. Now insert back into the hat, and then you'll just weave it all the way through and come up and out one of the stitch holes on the flap of the hat. Pull that through. Now you're going to insert back into that stitch hole, and then you're going to weave it over just a little bit so that you can get into that next area on the hat. Weave through one of the stitch holes on the side here. And now we're just going to keep doing this until we have sewn across here, as well as this tip area. All right, so now that you've sewn across the top, it should look something like this. And now we're going to sew just the tip down for like 2 stitches. So just insert there and pull out, then go back in into the hat and pull this. And that's how you're going to sew the fold over on the hat. Now I'm just going to secure this with a knot, and I'll trim the end. Then using a smaller crochet hook, I'm going to insert into the hat, grab that tail, and then pull it through. And then you can feel that it is a little squishy, which is totally fine. And then your fold over on the hat should look like that. All right, now let's move on to making the pom-pom. Now let's move on to the pom-pom. We're going to be using white yarn for this. Now to begin with round 1, the pattern says to make 6 single crochets into a magic ring. So I'm just going to create my magic ring here, then place 6 single crochets inside. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then pull that tail to close the hole. All right, now let's move on to round 2. The pattern says increase in each stitch around for 12 stitches. So I'll place 2 single crochets into each of these stitches for a total of 12. All right, and that's going to be the end of round 2. Now I'm going to place my stitch marker in that last stitch just to hold my place. Now let's move on to rounds 3 and 4. The pattern says to single crochet 12. So for those 2 rows, I'm just going to place 1 single crochet into each of these 12 stitches. And now that's the end of round 3. So for round 4, we're going to do the same exact thing. Single crochet 12. All right, and that's going to be the end of round 4. Moving on to round 5, the pattern says invisible decrease around 6 times for a total of 6 stitches. So I'm just going to place 6 invisible decreases into this row. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this last one is going to be the 6th invisible decrease. All right, now we're going to fasten off, and for this you don't need to leave a long tail for sewing. I'm just going to pull that tail all the way through, and now with the starting tail I'm going to bunch this up and I'm going to put it inside of the ball here. So using a chopstick, I'm just going to place it inside there, And now I'm going to add just a tiny bit of fiberfill to this. And now that I've added the fiberfill, let's weave in this tail. I'm going to take my yarn needle, and we're just going to do an invisible fasten off. So you're going to skip this first stitch, you're going to insert it into the second stitch underneath both loops, pull it through, and then I like to pull the yarn forward, and you're going to go underneath the back loop of the last stitch only, and then you're going to pull it to make it invisible. Now you can trim this tail just a little bit, then I'm going to use the chopstick just to place that tail inside of the hole. Just like so. And it's okay if this is actually open because this will be what is attached to the hat. So let's do that now. To attach the ball to the hat, we're just going to apply a small dot of hot glue to this opening. So I'm just going to place a tiny bit on the top here. Just like so. So it doesn't need to be a lot. And then I'm going to place that directly on the magic ring from the hat. So you're just going to place it right on there and give it a little push, and then you're going to hold it in place so that it can attach. All right, and then you can kind of give it a little squish so that you can get the shape right. And that's going to be the pom-pom. Now let's move on to making the band on the hat. To make the band, we're going to be using the white yarn again. And for round 1, the pattern says chain 36. So I'm going to make my slip knot here. And then we're going to chain 36. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 35, and 36. Now you'll want this to fit around the hat, and if it doesn't, you can add or take away chains. So this is going to be the point where you want to make sure that it will fit around the hat. So you don't have to have it perfect, you just need to make sure that it can go all the way around the base. So just like so. And you are going to lose a little bit of the length while we're crocheting, but right there I'm happy with how that fits, so let's move on. Now the pattern says, working into the back bumps, we're going to half double crochet across for 35 stitches. So that just means we're going to flip our chain over so we can see those back bumps hanging out along there. You're going to yarn over and you're going to insert your hook underneath that back bump. So if you were to flip this over, you're going to see that you have the V or the chain stitch on the other side. So then you're going to yarn over and pull through, and that's going to leave 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops to make the half double crochet. So let's do that again. Yarn over, and then you'll see that there are these little ridges along the edge here. You're going to insert underneath one of those ridges or the back bump. Yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through. So it should start to look like this. Sometimes it's a little tricky to get those bumps onto the hook, but just go slow and you'll be able to get them on there. So after a while, you'll notice that you have a set of V stitches up on top, and then if you were to flip this over, you actually have another set of V stitches on the bottom. These V stitches are actually the chain. So we're working into the bumps along the back. All right, and this is what the band should look like once you are finished. Now I'm just going to fasten this off. We won't need to leave a tail for sewing, and then I'm just going to pull this tail all the way through, just like so. Now we're going to attach the band to the hat. And what I like to do is I start at the back so you can kind of see where the eyes are. I'm just going to follow that all the way to the back side. Now straight pins are optional for this, but I'm just going to use it to hold that in place for just a moment while I weave in these tails. So with your yarn needle, I'm just going to insert into the hat, come out one of the stitch holes and pull that through. And then I'll do the same for this bottom one. And you can come out on the same stitch hole. All right, now I'm going to tie a knot. And then you can trim these and use a smaller crochet hook to pull that knot inside, just like so. Now you can remove this straight pin. And what we're going to do is we're going to, first you can just see that we are lining up with that back loop area from the hat, and it just is going to go all the way around the base. And it ends up meeting right back up with the start. So to glue this into place, we're just going to use a little bit of glue and attach as we go. So just go slow with the glue, and you don't need a lot. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit here. All right, then you're just going to want to press it into place, lining it up with that line from the hat. And we'll continue doing that all the way around. And then after a while, I do like to see, okay, am I lining back up with the hat? Do I need to give it more tension, or do I need to loosen it up a bit so that I'm not stretching it too much, where then we would have it overlapping? All right, and let's do this last little section here. All right, give it a little press. All right, and that is how you finish the band. And here's our finished Santa hat. I really like this one and how cute it is with that folded over spot with the pom-pom. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please give this video a like and a comment. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the remaining 2 days of the 12 days of mini Christmas amigurumi crochet along. I'll see you all back here tomorrow with a mini that goes everywhere Santa goes. Happy crocheting, friends!